Imagine you are walking down a city street on a hot summer day and you pass a steaming, rotting dumpster. Without even thinking, you pinch your nose or hold your breath until you walk past it. Today, you do this because the smell is gross, but for 2,000 years, you would have held your breath because you believed that odor was literally going to assassinate you. Before we discovered microscopic germs, the smartest medical minds on Earth believed in a concept called miasma. It was a terrifying, incredibly logical, and completely incorrect medical foundation that ruled human history. Miasma was, quite literally, bad air. The theory stated that decaying matter, rotting food, stagnant water, or unwashed bodies released a toxic vapor. If you inhaled this foul-smelling gas, it would physically corrupt your internal organs and kill you. The smell wasn't just a warning sign of bacteria. The smell was the weapon. And if you think our ancestors were stupid for believing this, you have to look at the world through their eyes. Before the invention of the microscope, human beings had to rely on their raw senses to survive, and the evidence for miasma was flawless. Where did people catch terrible fevers? In the damp, foul-smelling swamps. Where did plague spread the fastest? In cramped, reeking, garbage-filled slums. Where did soldiers drop dead from infection? On battlefields choked with the stench of the fallen. The correlation was undeniable. Bad smells equaled death. They had the right locations, they just had the wrong villains. They didn't know the swamp hid malaria-carrying mosquitoes. They thought the swamp gas itself was the killer. In fact, the word malaria literally translates from medieval Italian into bad air. Because miasma was the accepted science, the entire medical world became obsessed with manipulating smells. If bad odors brought death, then sweet odors brought life. When you picture a medieval plague doctor, you probably picture that terrifying, long leather bird beak. Today, we naturally assume it acted like an early gas mask, filtering out contagious particles. But it wasn't a filter, it was a perfume cannon. The tip of that beak was stuffed tight with dried roses, mint, cloves, and camphor. Doctors believed that breathing in a weaponized bouquet of flowers created a literal shield inside your lungs, neutralizing the toxic air before it could rot your blood. Everyday people carried their own miniature shields. Wealthy citizens walked the streets holding pomanders, hollow silver spheres filled with expensive spices, holding them up to their noses whenever they passed an alleyway. Poorer folks just carried an orange studded with dried cloves or a pocket full of herbs. But sometimes a pocket of flowers wasn't enough. When a major epidemic hit a city, the local government would declare war on the atmosphere itself. In the 1600s, during outbreaks of the plague, city councils would order massive barrels of tar to be set on fire in the public squares, hoping the thick, acrid smoke would choke out the miasma. If that didn't work, they brought out the artillery. Cities would literally fire cannons into the empty sky, believing the violent shock waves and the smell of gunpowder would blast the bad air to pieces. This deep paranoia shaped the way people lived inside their own homes. For centuries, the night air was considered highly dangerous. The logic was that when the sun went down, the air grew cold, heavy, and thick with settling miasma. If someone in your house got sick, opening a window for fresh air was considered practically suicidal. Families would nail their windows shut, sleep behind heavy, suffocating bed curtains, and light fires in the hearth even in the dead of summer, just to keep the deadly night air from touching their skin. Even Florence Nightingale, the famous pioneer of modern nursing, believed heavily in miasma. But she took the opposite approach. She designed hospitals with massive towering windows on opposite walls to keep a constant howling draft blowing through the wards. She wanted to flush the bad air out. Ironically, her obsession with clearing the smell accidentally resulted in massive drops in airborne cross-infection. She achieved the perfect result for entirely the wrong reason. But miasma theory couldn't last forever. The crack in the foundation finally happened in London in 1854. A terrifying outbreak of cholera was ripping through the neighborhood of Soho. People were dying within hours. Following the rules of miasma, officials searched for the source of a foul smell, but a local physician named John Snow noticed something strange. The victims weren't breathing the same air, but they were all drinking from the exact same neighborhood water pump on Broad Street. Snow investigated the water. It was perfectly clear. It had no odor. To the miasma-trained brain, this water was perfectly safe. But Snow mapped the deaths, removed the pump handle, and the outbreak stopped. It was a pivotal, terrifying realization. Disease could hide in things that looked clean and smelled fine. The true killer was invisible. But old habits die hard. The final dramatic climax of the miasma era happened just 4 years later in 1858 during an event famously known as the Great Stink. A brutal heat wave struck London. The River Thames, which was being used as an open sewer for millions of people, practically boiled in the sun. The stench was so apocalyptic that it physically paralyzed the city. The British government, operating out of the Houses of Parliament right on the riverbank, went into a state of absolute terror. Politicians soaked their window curtains in chloride of lime to block the smell, but it wasn't enough. Convinced that this mega miasma was going to wipe out the entire government, they fled. Driven by the primal fear of bad air, Parliament immediately authorized the fastest, most expensive engineering project in the city's history, a massive modern underground sewer system to carry the waste away and stop the smell. It was a monumental feat of engineering, and it was entirely based on a fake medical theory. They built the sewers to cure the air, but by removing the raw sewage from the drinking water supply, they accidentally eradicated waterborne cholera in London forever. The entire history of medicine is built on this strange, beautiful irony. For 2,000 years, human beings fought an invisible enemy using the only alarm system they had, their noses. We look back and laugh at the plague doctors with their flower beaks, or the politicians running from a smelly river. But the truth is, they weren't foolish. They were observing the world with desperate precision. And you are no different. The next time you open your fridge, pull out a carton of milk and give it a quick sniff to see if it's safe to drink. Remember what you're doing. Evolution gave you that disgust reflex to keep you alive. The ancients just built a religion out of it.